Welcome to Talking Right with John Mosman. This is the Talking Right podcast. To find out more information about who I am and my latest articles and posts, head to johnmosman.net. I'm doing another podcast kind of the next day after doing the first one that I did yesterday. Now, it's not going to be a normal occurrence, but it's something that I had to do because I'm trying to stack up some episodes on there so that people know that there's actually something being done on this podcast, that this isn't just a once in a while kind of thing. The sooner I get everything put together, I will be able to do it on mostly a week-to-week basis or maybe a bi-weekly basis. I feel like I don't want to press anything on that too far, and that's okay for me. So, if you've been following my Twitter account, which is at JOLEMO376, or if you've been to my website, you'll know that I've been talking about things such as Planned Parenthood and Black Lives Matter, and I've also been talking about political correctness. I think it's important in our day and age to talk about these kinds of things, because especially when you look at what's going on in the political arena, especially with the GOP primaries, you see someone like Donald Trump, who is in a lot of ways the person that shouldn't be winning, shouldn't be ahead of the polls, winning. But I think what he represents in some degree is a no holds barred idea of just saying what it is, saying it how it is, using the actual words, understanding that you can't just hide behind political correctness, you can't just claim certain things and then not do it. I think people see a certain integrity to that, and obviously maybe not a very nice or very gentle way of saying things, or maybe perhaps not the most polished or the most even popular way about saying things. But he does still say his mind, and I think people in this country, for a lot of people, that's a huge thing. Because we're living in a society where words don't matter anymore. That you can just say what you want to say. And there's no accountability. I mentioned this yesterday a little bit, but I wanted to go into detail because I can talk about Planned Parenthood and I can talk about all the videos, but hopefully you're going out there and you're watching YouTube and you're looking at the news, and by now hopefully you know the crap and the just awful, moral, repugnant things being done by Planned Parenthood. And I think hopefully you should also be looking at what Black Lives Matter groups are doing, people who are now actively politically protesting. And of course that's the big question now: is it surprising that this group went from being so-called protesting quote-unquote civil rights to now being a political function? I think that's something to be interesting. I think that's an interesting perspective that people need to glean on more. But I can go into those kinds of things in more detail. But today's episode, I want to briefly mention them, not because I want to get into it again about all the bad things that Black Lives Matter. You can go to my website. You can look at where I posted an article called "Black Lives Matter, but not all Black Lives." Black Lives Matter, but not every Black life matters. Meaning they're not as upset about certain Black lives being lost. They're not upset about the Black lives that are disrupted by protesting and violence. They're not, all these kinds of things that obviously show them to not really be concerned for it. But I want to go to the fact that they do say that they're who they are, and that's not who they are. And it's the same thing with the Planned Parenthood. They can say they're about planning parenthood. I mean, when you think about it, it's such an oxymoron that they would call themselves Planned Parenthood, because they do everything in their power to avoid parenthood. They do everything in their power to help people not be parents. And on top of that, they do everything they can to help subvert parents to know about their child who may be 15 or 16 who is considering an abortion. And we're told, oh, it's just a private matter, right? It's just a private matter between a girl and her body. Except for the fact that there's another life that is involved here. And the fact that a girl may be making a decision without all the facts and all the information and may end up having psychological ramifications because of it. But well, let's not talk about that, because no one wants to talk about that right now. But the fact that they call themselves Planned Parenthood, I mean, we live in a society where we just have to say something, and we don't have to mean it. We can just lob accusations, and we don't have to go through the process of proving something. You know, it's an important reason why due process is an essential Bill of Rights for us. And if you don't know what due process is, I recommend that you do go in and look into due process, because it tells us that we have a right not to just be accused. And I think I would extend it beyond just the government or accusing us of a crime that we didn't do. Okay, but I'm talking about we have the right to not just be accused of being a racist or a hater or being accused of doing something, and then everybody in the public arena lumping on that person and judging that person, right? Because we do have a right to have our voice heard. We do have a right also that anyone who does speak out and make an accusation has to prove it. But we don't care about proving what our words mean. We don't care about saying the right words or using the right words, because that's another element to this that no one wants to talk about. And that is, it does matter how you communicate things. One of the things I think I'll definitely be doing on this broadcast will be talking about the fact that communication is important. Communication is very important. And it's important to know when you're saying something and doing something. Because a lot of times you can say something and do something and they contradict each other. Because A, you either don't know what you're doing and you don't know what you're saying, or B, you don't understand that those actions mean the opposite of those words. Or the C option is that you don't care, because for a lot of people it's monkey see but monkey do, monkey see monkey do kind of thing. You know, it's a thing where we say it, say it but don't do it, right? You know, the idea of I'm going to tell you you can't do that, but I'm going to do it anyways. And we see it all the time. It's what makes people such hypocrites. But words matter. And the affirmative position that a lot of people take is that if we can just say, well, this is for this. And it seems like hardly anybody really wants to contest that. And why should they? Because we are living in a time and age where people can just lob something at you. They can just say something. They can make an accusation. And it can totally ruin your life. And if you fight back, you're then labeled. You're blackballed as a hater. As someone who is saying hate speech, as someone who is discriminating, as someone who is not nice. I mean, all these things can come out there. And I think it's a dangerous proposition to be in, to where people don't mind what those words mean. They don't put fact and evidence. And I think it's kind of interesting, the society we're living in, because a lot of people who say they're for facts or for evidence are on the contrary. If you followed some of the things that I've done before, I have talked about the fact that a lot of atheists are very theological. They're very dogmatic. They make dogmatic stances all the time, and they do it without evidence. And yet they're not supposed to be the people that do that. Yet they do. Because for a lot of people now, and a lot of postmodernism, it doesn't matter if you've got the facts. It just matters that you think that way. It doesn't matter that someone can tell you evidence, because people now just flat out reject evidence because they don't want to. We have that too often. And I think everyone to some degree does it. I think it's an easy thing to do in our society. But I think it's something that is causing problems for us, because if we can't back what we say up, if we can't go out and go through the process of discovering for ourselves what things mean, it puts us in a problem. And I know that there's certain things that we can't necessarily give facts to. It's one of the reasons why I think Christians have to be very careful, and why a lot of Christians probably shouldn't be debating. Because there's a lot of things about our faith that impact that. And by the way, if you don't know who I am a conservative, but I think we have to be careful with the word conservative, because a lot of people who are seemingly conservative are very liberal. And I could go into that in the future. If any of you are interested in that, just hit me up at Twitter and say, hey, let's talk about your distinctions of conservative and liberal. Because a lot of times, I think people don't understand those distinctions. And some people may say that, John, you're just going into semantics over it. But it does matter. Okay, right? Because words matter and things matter. And you have to be consistent in those things. And if you're not consistent, one, you're going to get called out on it. But two, it puts you in a problem, because then maybe you don't understand. And sometimes it's in situations it's imperative for you to understand. It's important for you to understand what you believe, what you do not believe. And being able to communicate it is a very important thing. Communication is a very important thing. Now, I will go out there and tell you that I have some struggles in my life where I struggle with communicating with people. It's very hard for me. It has been. But I've had to be very clear, and I've had to be very conscientious about what I'm saying, how I'm saying it, who I'm saying it to. And I don't think people go through that process anymore. And I do have to say that technology has aided in that. I mean, when you think about it, we all go on Facebook, we all go on Twitter, and we can just say whatever we want to. And then, how many people on Twitter get in trouble? We see this all the time with athletes and stars who go out there, they say something, and then they apologize. Because they don't take the time to say, what should I say? Yeah, I could probably fill up my Twitter account with just saying all the things I want to say. But I am conscientious about how I say things. And I know that if I'm going to say something very controversial out there, I have to own up to it. I know that I'm not into this thing to be popular. I feel like there's things going on in our world, there's things going on in our lives that matter. And we have to be able to understand these things. We have to be able to communicate, and we have to have someone clearly doing that. Because there's a lot of madness out there. There's a lot of people who are not saying the right words. They're not communicating their viewpoint articulate enough. They're not articulating that enough. And they have to understand that people judge what you do and what you believe and how you look at life by how you communicate those things. Now, I'm not a communication expert. I'm not going to claim to be a communication expert. I don't have a degree in communication. But I do understand communication from the standpoint of my experiences in life and my experience as a debater both in high school and in college, where communicating is a very important thing. To understand and making your point, making it well enough, and being able to use as few as words possible to make your point. But for those who don't know who I am, I am a conservative Christian. I am someone who does believe in Jesus Christ. I am someone who tries to be as active as I can in my church. I do struggle with, my faith sometimes, but I know that it exists, and I know what I believe, and I know God exists, and these are my worldviews. And I do believe the world that I know, the world built upon thousands and thousands of years of history and traditions, has just been thrown out the window by people of our generation, the people of our era now, because they don't like it. And they don't go through the process of saying, should I really throw this out the window? Can't there be something that I can glean from this that is important enough to me? But people have such reckless abandon now, they really do when you think about it. They can just go, I guess I don't need this now, and I can just choose and go about how I want to, right? buffet-style theology, buffet-style philosophy, buffet-style ideology. And you're going to find out that if you continue to have that kind of mentality, it's going to cause you problems. It does cause you problems. I've got friends out there who are very nice people who do, I think, believe in God, but I don't think they really listen to God. I don't think they really think God's words matter. And if you're going to be a Christian, you want to make sure that your words matter. You got to make sure the words you listen to matter. Because as a Christian, you should believe and see that the Bible is very specific about things. It doesn't leave room for too much interpretation. And people are willing to accept things far more than they should because they put it on themselves. They become that catalyst. And this is something that I'll talk about too in the future, is a unfortunate byproduct of the Enlightenment. And for those who don't know about the Enlightenment, I suggest you Google the Enlightenment. It's a period in time where people started to put the emphasis on what they think instead of maybe what would have been true, like from a factual sense of what is true, or could have been considered true from a social economic standpoint or from a cultural, traditional, religious standpoint, right? One of the biggest people in that movement was Kierkegaard. And Kierkegaard said, it's in my mind, that's what matters. And that's what people think, right? I've always, and I'll be honest with you, I do think that for a lot of Christians, especially in the evangelical, quote-unquote, Protestant world, as much as they despise the Catholic Church, they despise the Pope and all that, I don't think they realize that they are themselves their own little popes. And now we have it so popular now that people just pick and choose, and people just think, if I just believe this, or if I just do this, and I don't go through the process of trying to figure out if it's true or not, if I don't understand why it's said, they end up going to churches like Joel Osteen's. I think it's interesting that Joel Osteen, and I said this in the other podcast, but I'm going to express upon it more. I think it's very interesting that Joel Osteen is one of the most popular, quote-unquote, preachers in America. I think it's very interesting that Joel Osteen is popular. And his whole message is name it and claim it, right? If you just believe it, if you just accept this, he doesn't say anything concrete. He doesn't give you analysis on what the Bible says. He doesn't tell you what God says. He just says, you know what? You should be happy. You should be, who you are. Accept who you are. Believe it, and it's going to be happening. And you know what? There is a certain lunacy to that idea. That if I just believe it, then it's got to be true. And see, I think this is something that some atheists, I think, confuse with other Christians. Because there are obviously an element with people who are in the Christian faith, or people who are religious, who call themselves Christian, which one they fit in that dynamic. But there are people out there who do kind of just have this idea: if I just believe it, it's going to be true. And what makes something true is not necessarily believing in it. But if you know that it's truth and you believe in it, there's a different dynamic there. And I'm willing to go into that too in the future as well. But with Joel Osteen and people like him, and whose messages, there are no real consequences for what you do. It doesn't matter what you say or do, as long as you're happy, as long as you have the car and you have money. Everything is permitted. Of course, he may say some things are wrong, like murder is wrong, or dousing on someone's self-confidence may be wrong. But he doesn't really talk about why it matters what you believe, and he doesn't talk about why it's very imperative that certain words in the Bible mean what they mean. And we have that now in America. And it's a sad state of affairs. Because you can have someone like Rachel Dolezal, who was the president of the NCAAP in Spokane, who said she was black. Said she was black, even though she was white. I'm black. Oh, really? How can you say that? Well, I just think I am. Contrary to the fact that you're not. And people think, oh, if I can do my hair this way, and if I can put on a little makeup this way, and I can go to a college that studies black culture, that I could just be black. Of course, you can agree and kind of definitely be part of that culture, but you can't factually state that you're black, which she did. And it's the same thing with Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn, whoever, which one you want to call him, he, she, whatever. Oh, I feel like I'm a woman. I'm a woman now. Okay, well, there are certain biological things, evidence to why you're not a woman. You can say that you agree with what with how women see things. You can kind of say that you have a little bit of femininity to it. You can say that you get those things. Those are all okay to say, I guess, if you want to say, I'm transgender. I just, I'm a man, but I feel like I'm more a woman or whatever. That's one thing to say, but that's not what transgender people like Jenner are saying. They're saying I'm a woman, even though I've got a penis. And sure, you can go through the procedures of things, but there's still things, both the obvious biological evidence that he is a man, but there are other factors to that. But you could just say it. I could put on a wig, I could put on a dress, I could put on some makeup, and all of a sudden I'm a woman. And we have too much of that now, where people can just say, I want to be this way. I'm just gonna all of a sudden say that I'm this, when I'm not. You see it now in our political culture, right? You get people who are in the political realm, in the political class, who say that they're conservative, and they're not, or they can say that they're liberal, and they're not. Barack Obama told us that he was moderate. He wasn't. Look how many things he promised to people that he never followed through, and he's not the only one. It has nothing to do with who he is or the fact that he's a Democrat, although there are elements that do have to do with those things. But he's not the only one that doesn't. Democrats are not the only ones that do it. That's why people are fed up with the political class. Because people don't care about their word anymore. Politicians don't mean what they say anymore. And it's terrible. Because no one wants to come out and call them out. Because then if that person happens to be a woman, you're now anti-woman. Even though most of the people who are saying that are liberal Democrats, and are very iffy about who they consider women or not, right? Or who they consider transgender. There's probably a lot of people out there who don't think Caitlyn Jenner is really a transgender person because Jenner's a Republican. So seemingly a Republican, somewhat conservative. Those are some interesting issues there. That we now have people who say, oh, Clarence Thomas isn't black. He's really not black. Why? Oh, because he's a conservative. It's lunacy. Straight out lunacy. And I think it's important that we finally get to a point where we can say, enough is enough. Let's call it as it is. Let's say what it is. Because if we don't, we're lost in this fog of not having facts, of not understanding what we're saying. There's a great YouTube video, and I need to remember the comedian's name, where he does a whole skit, and I think he was probably like a poet. He obviously has like a background in education and literature, but he talks about people who say things that they don't really mean. Right? and that in the sake of trying to agree or try to not upset people, or even in the fact that you're not even conscientious about what you're saying or doing, that people say things wrong all the time. And there's no fact checker, there's nothing to back that up. Anyways, that's just what I think for today. I don't know the next time I'm going to be doing a podcast. It'll probably be next week. But until then, I hope you take care of yourselves. Be safe. Because right now we're living in a crazy world. And remember, what words you use matter more than you can ever imagine. For Talking Right Podcast, I'm John Mosman. Find out more information, you can go to my website, johnmosman.net. Go to my Twitter, JOLEMO376. That's also my Instagram account. And I will see you guys and talk to you guys next week. Enjoy the weekend, and I'm out of here.